Limpani, oh Limpani, how I miss thee. The buildings they stand for their last demand that I shall never forget thee. Limpani, oh Limpani, how I miss thee. The sun was scorned, now feel his thorns. The rose will come and surely avenge thee, oh my Limpani. Now, over the course of a lifetime, my friends, you gonna hear a lot of tales. Tales of heroism, tales of villainy. What about them tales of those stuck there in the middle, not sure whether they're going to heaven or hell? This here happens to be one of them there tales. The tale of Limpany. Let me tell you about it. This here, my friends, is the story of Limpany. You might not never heard nothing about Limpany, you might not even know where it is. But if you ever take a trip along the Dakota River, just northwest of Flat Neck Station, you may notice a burnt down town. About half a dozen buildings can still be seen, but the forest has already taken back the land. The reason why this is important is because you won't find anything written or on record about this locale, just whispers and remnants of a time actually not that long ago. Now let me give you a little backstory on the fall of this rising settlement. It's a sad tale of treachery, betrayal, despair, and possibly a redemption or two. Now, by looking at its current condition, you can't really tell much about it other than it used to exist. Certain buildings can still be seen and made out as what they used to be, such as Brewster's Provisions, once owned and operated by the father and daughter tandem Wilfred and Charlie Brewster. Across the street from there's that general store. You can see the husk of what used to be McCluskey Saloon, home to the one-eyed sharpshooting marvel known as Clarence Conrad McCluskey, or CC as his friends amorously called him. Now, aside from the clearly visible brick jail, you have the sheriff's office. This building in particular was important as it was the starting point of the end of Limpany. The original gentleman that was sheriff, a Mr. Frederick Hines, mysteriously disappeared before ever taking office. It was said he was a con man from far out east, and his past had caught up with him before he had a new future. It's never confirmed, though. His replacement was a deputy whom he moved from Honestburg to Limpany as a start for his family. His name was William LaCurtis Milton, an honest, hard-working man of God and husband to Willie Mae Milton. The Miltons had 7 kids, a big family. In order of oldest to youngest, there was Jameson, Lil Bill, Harrison, Jonas, Adam, Christoph, and the only girl, Deliverance. By the time the Miltons had moved to Limpany, however, the kids that were left at home were the youngest 3. The older kids were off and about living their own lives. Jameson, who had started off as a deputy himself, decided to sign up for the military. He was currently stationed at Fort Wallace, and as a sergeant-at-arms, he was responsible for training these soldiers. He was really good at his job, too, as no soldier had been lost since he had taken over the training. Lil Bill, who was a junior, had moved to Kentucky to run a farm ranch. And even though he was a womanizing gambler who sired several offspring, he wasn't that bad a guy. At least that's how the family treated him. Harrison, he had moved out east and worked for a large hospital as head of the eye specialty department in New York City. He rode home frequently and preferred the single life as it allowed him to buy the fancier things. He was doing well according to his letters, and after a battle with drugs, his brother Jonas truly found God and got himself together. Him and his wife and daughter ran a church in Saint Denis. He was the head father at the Church of the Holy Blessed Virgin. They met every Sunday at 8 a.m. in the morning without fail. And aside from the occasional cigarette, he didn't have many vices. Now that brings us to the 3 at home. Adam was now 18 years old and worked with his cousin on the Downs Ranch, located just northwest of Calumet Seat. His cousin Taylor got him a job as a ranch hand to help break horses, chase off varmints and vagrants, and help protect the owner's assets. He traveled back and forth from the ranch to Limpany every day as he was a hand in training. He couldn't live at the ranch just yet. He was still schooled by his mother in the evening after dinner, because luckily for Adam, his mother, the aforementioned Willie Mae, was the teacher for all the Limpany kids. Christoph was the quiet, sensitive child closest to his mother, only second to his little sister. He was bright, but had a difficult time speaking with others, so he often maintained his distance and stayed to himself. He loved to fish with his father and cook with his mother, and his best friend in the whole wide world was his little sister Deliverance. Now, her being the youngest and only daughter, it was clear she was going to be different, special even. But to top it off, she was born with all of her internal organs flipped around backwards. Situs inversus, they called it. Strange and rare thing, but it happens. Her name came from the fact that it took almost 49 hours to pop her out her mama, and with all the complications, she wasn't expected to live past the age of 5. She was now 13 and a ball of spitfire. Now you may be thinking to yourself, why am I rambling on about the family tree? Well, it's necessary to understand the ramifications of what was to transpire for the inhabitants of Limpany. Yeah, a lot of words there, I know. But this family was destined for tragedy, one might say, the moment William Sr. took over as sheriff. What was unbeknownst to the newly promoted lawman was the fact that the previous sheriff was on the payroll for one Tiberius Cornwall, major stock owner of the Cornwall Kerosene and Tar Company. This shyster was into all sorts of unlawful activities and employed the missing Limpany sheriff to use as a means to dispose of, quote, unquote, any problems within the means of the law. A great plan had it not all turned to shit when Frederick Hines went missing. Mr. Cornwall was a man of a lot of money, a little compassion, so it was easy to imagine the look on his face when he was told the new sheriff wasn't willing to play along. With an anger-filled, bigoted heart, he planned the downfall of, in what his opinion was, a boy that didn't know his place in this world. He vowed to show that son of a bitch who exactly the fuck he was messing with. He thought it would be an easy task. He would learn otherwise very quickly how wrong he was. Cornwall tried money, and when that didn't work, he turned to women. He tried to catch the sheriff in compromising situations, but the devoted husband of 30 years refused to betray his wife. All this did was piss Cornwall off more and more. He once shot a working girl in the face for being able to seduce Sheriff Milton. He disposed of her body in the Hartfield oil fields, which he owned, and body turned up almost 2 years later. With no proof or witnesses, the only lead he had to go on was the fact that he identified the body. See, the sheriff had been visited by this lady before, under the guise, late one night, that she was a victim of a robbery. She had William going, until she flashed her breast at him, revealing a distinct tattoo below her left breast. It caught him off guard and alerted him to her scheme. He escorted her out of his office promptly, locked the door, and recommended she seek help from the sheriff and Valentine. After all this time in the ground, the oil had managed to preserve the clothing, which in turn prevented the skin from drying up and deteriorating. It broke William's heart that she was not going to receive any justice. She was just another in a long series of casualties in this war between two stubborn men. It started to consume William. He was about to fall from grace. The tipping point happened when Cornwall had his goons corner Willie May in Deliverance while they were picking up mail at Flatneck Station. The 4 masked men were in the middle of attempting to violate Willie May's virtue when a convoy of soldiers headed to Fort Wallace, where her son was currently stationed, interrupted their plans. The convoy killed all 4 of them, and the only thing in their pockets was money and a Cornwall Kerosene and Tar job advert. Again, with no suspects, alive or otherwise, and the advert being easily explained away as coincidence, no judge in the territory would issue a warrant for Cornwall. He is too powerful, too out of reach for a lowly small-town sheriff. Both men were unwilling to succeed to the other, and on the evening of Thanksgiving in 1898, the Milton's home was bombarded with arrows during the night. This was a failed attempt to blame the local Native American people. It was a failed attempt because the local Wapiti tribe handmade their arrows, and they were all distinct and different, where these arrows were all machined and produced. William broke internally, but he used this as an excuse to get his family out of harm's way. He sent Willie May, Christophe, and Deliverance to live with the family in St. Denis. He felt they had a better chance of blending in and surviving there. Adam at this point was living on the ranch and was the second hand only to the lead hand, his cousin Taylor. They had been suspicious of something awry for a couple years and still routinely traveled to Limpany to check on the family. They just happened to be home visiting that Thanksgiving when everything went to shit. 2 weeks went by before the boys were willing to travel back to Downs Ranch. And on the morning of December 11th, it was especially getting snowy, and in anticipation of the looming storm, the boys were convinced to ride back. Packed up, had coffee and prayed with William before they left. It'd be the last time they would see each other. None of them realized it. That first explosion rocked everyone at the ranch awake. Stumbling into his holster and vest, Adam was the first outside in the snow. The moon shined brightly enough that it illuminated the ranch, so that Adam could see Taylor burst out of his door, with his on-again, off-again lover, Betty Lou, in tow. Then there was a second explosion. Adam yelled out to his cousin, "You hear that shit?" "Why the hell you think I'm in here for instead of in there with her?" Taylor quipped back. "Sorry, just had the worst feeling about it all," Adam grumbled back. The boys made eye contact, and the worst possible thoughts imaginable crossed their minds as a large earth-shaking explosion happened in the direction of Limpany, backed up by the fact that the skyline in that direction was now lit up a reddish-orange hue. "Oh, hell, the horses are getting out, the pens." "It's all right, you and Betty Lou get them horses. I'm heading over to Limpany." And with that, Adam rushed inside the barn, hopped on his horse, and started riding towards. And shudders went through him and his horse. His screams could be heard off in the distance.
Be sure to join us next time for the thrilling adventures of Adam Flip Milton in the Limpany Rose. Will the boys make it? What will happen to the livestock? What is going on in Limpany? Be sure to check us out next time to find out the answer to these questions and more on the Limpany Rose.
Beats and buttons, beats and buttons, beats and buttons.